I hope you enjoy the following class. Do realize all of these video classes are based on what I teach at Silicon Dojo here in Asheville, North Carolina. These are free to the end user, hands-on technology classes where basically you just sign up, you show up, and you get to learn technology. I will remind you that free to the end user is not actually free. All of this stuff costs me a shocking amount of money. So if you would like to support the educational programs that I am creating, the education that I deliver, please think about clicking on the donor box link down below and throwing a couple of dollars in for the cause. I hope you enjoy this class, and more importantly, I hope to see you at Silicon Dojo sometime in the future. Welcome back. As you know, I am Eli, the computer guy, and in today's class, we are going to go over geolocation using your external IP address. So knowing the geographic location of a device can be a very valuable thing when you're trying to create products in the IoT world, the Internet of Things world, right? So at Silicon Dojo, we do a lot of IoT stuff with computer vision and computer voice, actually being able to talk to computers instead of using keyboards, those types of things. And one of the interesting things to play around with is basically APIs that provide information about things within your particular region. So imagine a weather API. So there's actually something called the Open Weather API. So you can ask what is the current weather, the current humidity in a particular area. You can ask for a forecast for a particular area. There are news APIs. So for local news, if you know your area, you plug your area in, basically the API can spit out all of the local news for your area. Different things. There's movie theaters, right? If you want to go out and want to watch a movie and you want to see what movies are currently playing, there are APIs to show you what movies are currently playing. One of the issues that you get into, though, in the IoT world is most of the time with IoT, you're not interacting with computers the way that we're used to interacting with computers. Again, with keyboards and mice and even monitors, right? A lot of times we're actually talking to our computers, and so our computers or our devices need to have an understanding of what their environment is in order to give you the best answer as easily as possible, right? So having your computer understand where it is quite literally physically within the world, that can be a useful thing to basically pass off as a value to an API call to say, I need to know the weather in Asheville, North Carolina. I need to know the movie times in Atlanta, Georgia, that type of thing, right? So, in order to get this, we need to have geolocation. Now, a lot of times when we think about geolocation, we think about the GPS units that are built into our smartphones, right? So there's something called the HTML5 API that essentially uses JavaScript in order to communicate with the GPS on your smartphone and give a very specific lat-long coordinates that can be sent off to a server in order to provide you the results that you need, right? That's what a lot of people think about. The problem is, again, with IoT devices, you don't necessarily have a GPS unit installed onto your particular device. You may not want a GPS unit installed into your particular device. And so the question then becomes, how can you very easily tell this device, more or less, horseshoes, hand grenades, or nuclear weapons, basically where in the world is this thing? Well, that's where your external IP address comes in, right? So in the modern world of networking, there's something called network address translation. All your devices, almost all your computer devices, almost as in 99.99999% of them are going to be using something called TCP/IP4. This is an internet protocol. They use something called IP addresses. There's something called the internal IP address scheme. So inside your network, your LAN, you'll have an IP address scheme of like 192.168.1.x. So your server might be 192.168.1.10. Your router might be 192.168.1.1. And this is a scheme that's replicated all over the world, right? There's probably like 20 of you going, oh, how did Eli know what my IP address is? Because that's what we do. Again, the 192 or the 10.0, those are what are called the internal IP address schemes. They're actually non-internet routable. So even if the IP address supposedly leaks onto the internet's just not going to care. It's going to ignore it, right? So that's where we have NAT, network address translation. So we have the internet IP addresses, your WAN IP addresses, the external IP addresses. And so all of the routers that are connected to the internet, any device that's directly connected to the internet, have that external IP address. And essentially what happens with NAT, network address translation, is your local internet, your private internet address, is translated through network address translation to use your external IP address to go out to whatever web server that you're going to go to, right? But that external IP address, one of the interesting things about it is very well documented, right? Because those actually cost money, right? Those external IP addresses, one of the big things in the modern world is they cost money. There's only like 4.4 billion of those. It is kind of a surprise that we're still using TCP/IP4. Again, I have a TCP/IP4 video from 2009 where I talk about my teacher back in 2000 or 1999, somewhere around there, said that we would have to learn TCP/IP4, but don't worry about it. It was about to become obsolete, and we would be using TCP/IPv6 in no time at all. We're still using IPv4. 2023, I'm recording this video. We're still using IPv4. But anyways, so all those external IP addresses are very well documented. There's actually blocks. They are owned by ISPs or very large organizations, and they document essentially more or less how all of those IP addresses are allocated, right? Where do those IP addresses connect to? So if it's a large organization, they may document that it connects to a specific building, something like that. For us, most of the time for consumer internet access, basically the IP address blocks, it's documented what pool they're at, all right? So you'll have, with your router, most likely, you'll have what's called a dynamic IP address, a dynamic WAN address. That external IP address. So every once in a while, if you reboot your router, if you do something like that, it'll pull a new IP address. Basically, it's like DHCP. Just like you have DHCP on the LAN, there's more or less horseshoes and hand grenades. There's DHCP out for the ISPs. And so basically what the ISPs do is they say, okay, well, this IP address within this block, we are going to document that all of that is for this particular area, right? So generally that you'll have your central office, or if you have a cable internet, they'll have something else like that, but they'll have like some kind of central facility. And essentially they'll say all of these IP addresses are allocated to this central facility. And guess what? That central facility has an address. It has a latitude. It has a longitude for coordinates. It has a city that it's in. It has a state that it's in. It has a country that it's in. Has time zones and all that kind of stuff. And that's all literally just dumped into a database somewhere. So you can actually use a service. You can use a service to query where is this IP address, right? So basically you get your external IP address and you say, where is this IP address? You go to one of these database services and they say that IP address is, again, somewhere in Asheville, North Carolina. And again, horseshoes and hand grenades, it will get you to the city. It'll get you relatively close to where your physical device is, so that you can then dump that information, again, into something like openweather.com or something like that, so you can get that local information for you. So in today's class, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to use these particular services. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're actually going to need to get our external IP address. So if you know what IP address you want to query, so you could use this for people coming to your website. So let's say you have a website, people are coming to your website, you just grab their IP addresses. They do not have to consent. They do not have to say yes or anything like that. They come to your website. It is a absolutely normal transaction. It's part of how TCP/IP4 works, that the requesting computer has to provide the IP address to the server computer. And so the server computer can just take that IP address and then again, do with it as it likes. Put that into a database. Use that IP address to query basically a geolocation database to figure out where that person is, that type of thing. But anyways, today we're going to say we don't have these people's IP addresses. So that what we're going to do is we're first going to figure out what is our external IP address. So we have this device, again, whether it's a computer, whether it's a server, some IoT device, your version of Siri, whatever else, we have this device. It is connected to the internet. First thing is, how do we know what that external IP address is? Again, not a 10.0 IP address, not a 192.68 IP address, whatever that external IP address is. Then once we're able to get that external IP address, we're going to plug that in to an API call to say, where is this external IP address? We're then going to get what's called a JSON response. So this is a data format response, basically like a list or an array if you're dealing with PHP world or something like that. And then we can call particular values out of that JSON response. And then once we have those values, again, we can feed that into another API call or into a security procedure or something like that. So with that, let's go over to the computer and I can show you how this works, because this is really, really, really cool, really useful. And the awesome thing is, what I love about the modern world is this is all API calls that are basically for free. Free. You can just hammer the hell out of these services for free. That's amazing. Okay, so here we are at my computer. So we have this open up in VS Code. This is Python. So again, we have import requests up here, all basically normal Python code. I am running this on my M2 Mac. Normally, whenever we do these projects, I'm using our lab computers, the Ubuntu on those old MacBook Pros. The reason that I'm actually using my M2 Mac today is because all you folks want to try to hack me or whatever. And so essentially I'm using my little Tunnel Bear service here in order to use VPN. So now I'm in Argentina, or I can be in Australia, or I can be in Austria. So again, one thing to think about with that external IP address is so that address is where you actually hit the internet from, right? So if you go through a VPN service, then the external IP address that you're going to be receiving will be the external IP address for that VPN provider, right? So if I was not connected to a VPN right now, and I went through this project today, you would... I don't know what you would do with it, but you would do something stupid with the information that you found about my ISP or something like that. So basically with this, routing it through the VPN. So as far as these services are concerned, my external IP address is from the VPN itself. Right, so here, basically we're importing the request module. And then here what we're doing is we're going to say IP address equals requests.get and then http api.ipify.org, and then we put .text. So basically what this is going to do is it's going to get an object from this API. This is what's called a REST API. And then we're going to turn it into text, and then we are going to print it out. If I come up here and I just do command and I click on this, what we'll see is if I go to api.ipify.org, all I'm receiving here, literally all I'm receiving back is simply the IP address, my external IP address. That is it. This is a really cool service. If you go to ipify.org, you can take a look at this. A simple public IP address API. Get what you want. Basically, you can hammer the hell out of this. You can use it without limit, even if you're doing millions of requests per minute. It's an open source project. They say it's not logged. They state it is not logged. Do I believe them? Of course not, because I'm not stupid. Anyways, but it is. It's very useful, very fast. And we come down here, you can see the API usage. So again, if you just want text, which is what I would recommend, is just get the text. This is how you just get the text. api.ipify.org spits out text for you. If you want JSON, so you can do the api.ipify.org format equals JSON. This will give you the JSON. So basically, you get the JSON, and then you have to reference the IP address by referencing IP. I guess there's a reason for doing that. I'm not doing it that way. Basically, I'm just getting the text here. And when I do that, if I then do run, so we do the requests, we do run, and we can see down here, I get 103.50.33.210, right? So this is showing me what my external IP address is currently using this. Again, as I say with that external IP address, if we go here and I change, let's say I want to be in Australia, Hopefully this doesn't fail on me. Okay, so I'm going to say that I'm in Australia now, and I'm going to hit run on this, and now it gives me an IP address of 45.76.118.254. Again, so this is that external IP address out there. Again, so we can track where we supposedly are in the world. Then we're going to come down here, right? And we're going to do the requests again, right? So we're going to create a variable called response. So response equals requests.get, and we're doing an F string here, right? So what an F string does is it allows you to dump a variable value inside of it. And so we're making another API call, another REST API call. So whenever you see these URLs, these hyperlinks, these are generally what are called REST APIs, HTTP IP-API.com JSON IP address. So basically what this is going to do is it's going to give me the information about this particular IP address. If I go over and I take a look at their site, again, another really cool service here. Let me refresh so you can see the information coming in from Australia. So with this, I can come down here and basically this is the kind of information that it can give you, right? So that 45.76.118.254, that's the external IP address. The continent is Oceania. The country is Australia. Country code is AU. City is Sydney. Zip code is 2015. Latitude, longitude, time zone. All of this type of information is what you can get from this API. What I like about this API is basically there's no API key for this. So I was using other IP address geolocation APIs out there, and honestly, I have to say their API key systems sucked. They were so bad, so bad. So you notice, right? If you watch my videos, if you take my classes, I've been doing a lot of stuff lately with OpenAI, ChatGPT, DALL-E, those types of things. And basically, their API key system is really nice. I create an API key, I put it into a project. Once I do the video, I delete the API key, and you're fine. One of the interesting things that I found with some of these geolocation APIs is, oh my golly, some of them you cannot change the API key. You create your API key, and that is it. You get that one API key. So if that leaks to the world, it's out there. And there's just a lot of tedious crap out there. So one of the nice things with this is, one, it's free. So it's free for non-commercial use for up to 45 requests per minute, right? So now again, in the real world, in a production environment, 45 requests per minute might not be enough. For you, for an entire Silicon Dojo class, if I have 10 people in a Silicon Dojo class, 45 requests per minute is fine. And so there's no daily cap, there's no weekly cap, there's no monthly cap. It's just 45 requests per minute. So free, 45 requests per minute. And it's pretty easy to do. So let's go over here. So basically, I uncommented out this code. So the response is going to equal request.get. We're going to go to IP-API.com, JSON, the IP address, and then we're doing the .json at the end of this. So basically, it's going to make sure that the value that comes back will be in a JSON format for Python, so that I'm able to basically go to specific indexes to pull out specific information. So with this, let's see if I'll uncomment this out just to show you what the response will be. So I want to click on the Go button. So I get the IP address, and then this is what the API response is in JSON, right? So we get a status of success, country is Australia, country code is AU, region NSW, city is Sydney, the whole 9 yards. So again, basically you're getting a nice little JSON response there. The cool thing is, again, since we brought this in as JSON here, if I uncomment out that particular print, we can print out the particular value that we want. So let's say all we care about is the city value. So I can print response city. I can run this again. So you get the IP address here, you get the JSON response here, and I get the city here. And so this can be very valuable, again, for those Oh, for the APIs that you're going to be using, like weather APIs, that type of thing, where you need a latitude, longitude, I can pull out the latitude or the longitude. If I need, let's say, the city, I can pull out the city. If I need an approximate zip code. So this can be a very valuable thing. Again, not necessarily pulling your own external IP address, but let's say if you have visitors coming to your website, you want to get an idea of where the visitors are coming from. Being able to get that kind of zip code can be a very useful thing. I've talked about this, previously for things like considering where you're going to expand your business. Let's say you have a pizza delivery business, and you're getting and you want to grow your business. You want to create a second location. You're getting a lot of calls from people that you cannot deliver to. They're out of your delivery area. Basically, if your website is collecting this information, you could figure out which approximate zip codes have the most people that are coming to your website where you're not able to help them. And so that might be the next place that you want to expand to, right? You get all this kind of really nice information out of here, which is really pretty cool. Beyond that, one of the interesting things with this particular API is you can actually ask for a lot more information. So we go over to the API documentation here. Let's see here. We can do the JSON, response formats JSON. One of the cool things here is there's actually this little checkbox list, and with this, you can decide what information you want out of the JSON response. Do you want status? Do you want message? Do you want continent or continent code or country code or region name, city, district, zip code, lat, long, time zone, offset? Do you want their currency? Do you know what currency they're in? So I can check off this. I want their currency. Let's see. I want to know if they're on mobile. I want to know if it's proxy. I want to know if it's hosting, right? And so basically with that, they give you this nice big long query here. I can then copy this. I can go over here and basically dump that in there. And then where am I looking for the IP address? The IP address is there. So basically I do IP address there. So it'll now for the IP address. And so with this, I get the status, the message, the country. And again, looking for something like the proxy. Are you interested if people are using proxy servers or VPN servers to get to your website? Do you have information on your website or your web app that's restricted to people that are only within a specific geographic location? So I only want people that are in Asheville, or let's say North Carolina. I only want visitors who are in North Carolina. Well, somebody starts using VPNs. So as far as their external IP address is concerned, they appear to be in North Carolina because that's where their IP address is located. But I say, no. I don't care where the IP address is located. I care where the user is located. So if they're using a VPN to be able to try to get access, I want to cancel that, right? So if I click on this here, basically what we'll find is near the end, we can see proxy, right? So proxy, so again, equivalent as a VPN is true. I am using a VPN in order to have this Australian IP address. And so again, depending on your particular situation, you may care about that and shut them down or whatever else. So anyways, this is basically all there is to the geolocation API and also how to get your external IP address. Really nice, easy to use. You don't need any API keys. These are basically free, especially on this low utilization. So you should definitely play with this stuff. Where in the world is my smart device? Anyways, I'm a horrible singer. Do you guys still watch that? Do the kids still? Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? I don't know. I don't know if people still watch that anymore. But now you will know more or less where in the world your particular IoT device is. And I think this is a really interesting thing to be thinking about. Again, especially with the modern world of computers and technology, one of the things that I find very bizarre is IT people nowadays, computer people, technology people. Many times we are still looking at computers and interacting and designing computer systems based off of how things were built literally 20 years ago. Again, really think about it. We have Siris and we have Alexas and we have, smart thermostats and that type of thing. But how many people are really thinking about computers that way and really thinking about what does a computer need in order to understand its environment? in order to be able to provide better responses to the end user, right? So much of what we see anymore, again, if you go out and you talk with coders nowadays, Node and React and mobile apps and all that kind of thing. And the funny part, I gotta say, the funny part about mobile apps is really mobile apps look a hell of a lot like the apps we've had for 40 years at this point. They're just, definitely got a faster refresh and all that, and you can touch the screen and that type of thing. But there's a lot of this stuff, a lot of this design, a lot of folks aren't thinking about is, again, in this modern world with technology, how can we start having these systems better understand their environments and building, again, for normal people to build systems. Like you right now can sit there, grab a crappy 2012 MacBook Pro and literally build a computer device that you can talk to, that it will respond to you with speech, that you can write codes. It'll tell you the time, it'll tell you the weather, it'll tell you movies, movie schedules and all that kind of thing. And you don't have to go through Siri, you don't have to go through Alexa, you don't have to go through whatever the hell it is that Google has. You can actually build all this with relatively simple APIs. Again, I think it's one of the weird things that I don't see more people kind of focused on, because I think this stuff is really awesome. But anyways, with the whole geolocation, the important thing to understand, again, you're not getting precise, right? So when you have a smartphone and you get that lat long coordinate from the HTML5 API, that is precise, that is GPS precise. However precise GPSs are at this point in time, that's how precise that is. Again, it is important to understand with this, it is not that precise, but again, it gets you to the city. The other thing to be thinking about with these types of systems is that they are database type systems, as in there's a database somewhere that holds this information. And so when you make the query, you're making a query to this vendor's database. Why that's important? So the service that I just showed you is free, 45 requests per minute. It's good enough for all you folks. It's good enough for me. It's good enough for my students. It's probably good enough for most of you. One of the things to look at, though, is with this type of service, there are other vendors out there that actually cost a surprising amount of money. It can be like $100 for 150,000 requests, which again, for something like a website, it does get to be pretty expensive. But one of the things that they sell is basically that they update their databases faster than other vendors update their databases, right? So again, with these IP addresses, that whatever the 45.76.118.254, this is a type of digital property, right? Somebody actually has ownership of this IP address, or really more these blocks of IP addresses. So these blocks of IP addresses, they can get moved within a company, right? They could decide, we have more people, we have more new customers over in Atlanta or something, so we're going to take this block and move it to Atlanta instead of being in Asheville. So that might be something that wasn't properly updated in the system. Entire blocks of IP addresses could be sold. So you may hear of an ISP going out of business or going bankrupt, something like that. They may sell blocks of IP addresses. Well, when they sell the block of IP address, they can, you could have Comcast selling to Spectrum. Spectrum goes off and uses the blocks for whatever they're going to use, right? The important thing is, though, it's not like the database auto-updates. Somebody, again, always remember, somebody's got to auto-update the database. Nothing in the technology world is actually magical, right? Somebody's got to do it. Something has got to do it. So if you're using one vendor that may be using outdated geolocation information for IP addresses, you might start getting some funky results. And so that's why, because a lot of people are like, well, if this is free or more or less free, why the hell would I spend $100 or whatever for 150,000 requests per month? And the reason is because that actually might be much more up to date than what these folks have. And again, it's one of those things that you have to be thinking about. Again, as I talk about that in the technology world, so many people think technology professionals, it's all about, again, the API calls, subnet masking, that type of thing. Again, real professionals, professionals in the tech world that get paid real money, it's thinking about things like this. It's thinking about, okay, if I go with this vendor, how often are the tables updated for this particular vendor versus a different vendor? So if I have to spend $50 more a month for this vendor, but I get better better results, that might actually make a lot more sense, right? This is the kind of thing that you really have to think about. So anyways, that's about all I got to say. That is a very, very long-winded class on something that I could probably explain in about 35 seconds. But anyways, you didn't come here. You didn't come here for a 35-second video. Or if you did come here for a 35-second video, well, you've stuck around. You've stuck around for whatever, 30 minutes or however long it's been. So anyways, as always, I enjoyed teaching this class and look forward to seeing you at the next one.